Who impressed us most on opening weekend of the NCAA Tournament? Who's our favorites to reach the Final Four in Houston? How important was the MLB's trip to Cuba? And what's our final thoughts on Tech basketball? Find out next. MCTV Sports 101 starts now. Welcome to MCTV Sports 101. I'm Kyle Stafford.
And I'm Billy Ingle. The NCAA Tournament got off to a wild start this past weekend with a record 10 double-digit seeds winning their opening round games. Kyle, which teams impressed you the most and which upsets were most shocking?
Well, I think I'm going to start with some of the top seeds. I think the teams that impressed me most, North Carolina, I know it's only a 16 seed, but Florida Gulf Coast was not your normal 16 seed. And it was close at halftime, and they came out, went on their run, and dominated that game. I think Kansas was impressive in both of their wins, especially the UConn win. They really dominated and controlled that game. And then Villanova, a team that had been knocked out early the past couple years.
Known for being knocked out early.
People were talking about it now. The way they dominated Iowa, They were saying no more. We are not losing. We're not going to be made fun of again. I mean, even Jay Wright left his starters in with like a minute left in the game. But I also think Stephen F. Austin was very impressive as a 14 seed. I thought they were underseeded a little bit. I thought they were maybe a 12 or 13 seed. They had the longest winning streak in the nation. Their win over West Virginia was very impressive. The way they dominated West Virginia at their own game, I hadn't seen anybody do that to West Virginia all year long.
Oh, and it was huge. I mean, if you just want to talk single players, like Thomas Walkup, the senior from SFA,
he's a beast.
He just had – it was a coming out party for him, basically. He got to put himself on the national stage and let people show people what he can really do in the game of basketball. Just reading off some of the stats he had 33 points, went 2 for 3 from deep downtown. I mean, the kid was doing it all. About 8 or 9 rebounds I have down here. Yeah. I mean, he plays well overall.
Well, he's been doing it all 4 years. My sister went to SFA, so I had to see a little bit of SFA the last couple of years. So, I mean, I saw him, a couple years ago, and he's just improved each year. 6'4", can play any position on the floor. I think he can make it in the pros at the next level.
I think he can as well. But another game that I want to get to, and this is the big game that it blew everyone's minds. Michigan State falls to Middle Tennessee.
Bracket buster right there.
Nobody saw this one coming. Nobody. And and the thing is, it wasn't even like Middle Tennessee just came out and just miraculously beat them. I mean, they were playing well.
They dominated.
I mean, it was crazy. I went over to look at these stats, and Michigan State, it wasn't like that they just had the worst game that they ever played. I mean, they just got beat.
I mean, 90 points that Middle Tennessee State scored on them? Man, that was impressive. Very impressive.
That's a good win. That's a good win.
After this weekend, the Final Four will be set. Billy, which teams do you think will make it to Houston, and which matchups catch your eye this weekend in the Sweet 16?
So I'm kind of Big 12 favorite or biased or whatever you want to call it, but I mean, we're a big, strong conference, and so I feel like that we're going to have a lot of teams that can make it in here. Now, right now, I have Kansas and OU coming out of the South and the West, and out of the Midwest, I have Virginia coming out of there. But, if Iowa State can steal that game in the Sweet 16 from Virginia, I mean, there's no telling if they could ride that all the way to the Final Four.
Yeah, Iowa State can score with anybody in the country. It's just whether Virginia's defense will overpower them. They're one of the best defensive teams in the country, so we'll see how Iowa State does in that one.
And it depends out if they can get George Niangis involved in the post game and get him going early and control the paint. If they want to do that, then they have a real good shot. But coming out of the East, see, I like Indiana to upset North Carolina to take over this division. And it's just the way that they've been playing late. They've been playing a lot of great team ball. They're having 3 players right now averaging in double digits, and I like what they're doing right now.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest matchup of the week in North Carolina and Indiana in the Sweet 16. It's not your normal Sweet 16 matchup. I mean, that's 2 of the biggest blue bloods in college basketball.
Oh yeah.
It's a kind of a toss-up. I think North Carolina, they have a run in them that they go on. It can be close for a while, but they go on a run, whether it's late in the second half or early, and they just dominate you. Providence hung with them early in the game, and I thought it was going to be a good game to the finish, and then all of a sudden Bryce Johnson, Marcus Page take over, and it was dominating. I like Kansas and Oklahoma as well to get there. I think it's the Big 12 ACC Final Four because I think Virginia gets over Iowa State.
Who wins it all? Who do you have right now? Right here, right now. Who wins it all?
Man, it's tough. I think it's between Kansas and North Carolina.
Oh, come on. Buddy Hield is going to win this national championship. You're hearing me say it right now.
He's got to play Kansas.
Hey, you know what? And he's done it before. It's not like it's nothing he's never seen before.
He's never beaten Kansas this year.
Hey, but there's a first time for everything. One time. One time, that's all you need. You got somebody with the fire in his eyes when the game's on the line. Buddy Hield's going to go get him that game.
It could be. It's a toss-up, man.
We'll see.
Whoever wins.
On Tuesday, the Tampa Bay Rays placed an expedition game against the Cuban national team in Havana, Cuba. Kyle, how important was this game in an effort to strengthen relations between the MLB and Cuba?
Well, I think it's big. I think you look at there's 184 players from Cuba that have played in the major leagues. You talk about some of the big names right now that are in there. Jose Abreu, Yoenis Cespedes, Aroldis Chapman, Kendrys Morales, Yasiel Puig. There's a lot of big name players that come from Cuba, and it's definitely a big deal. It's more than just a game. I mean, this was more than just a game, and that's why. And we didn't even say the final score in that because
we haven't even mentioned the stats of the game more than the impact that it has itself.
It's outside the game. It's bigger than the game itself. I think it's good for the relationship between the MLB and Cuba, so players can have an easier route that want to go play in the MLB, and especially see their families. I mean, one of the Rays players hadn't seen his family in 3 years.
Yeah, I actually have that, who was it? Duran Verona. He signed with the Rays last May after defecting from Cuba, thinking that he's never going to see his family members again, his cousins, aunts, uncles, and then he is blessed with this opportunity to come down with the Tampa Bay Rays and get to reunite himself with his family. And that's some real magical things that the world of sports can bring. And so I thought that was a real great story.
Yeah, and in the Rays, actually, he was probably not going to make their 40-man roster, but they put him on it just for that trip.
Yeah, he actually let off.
Yeah, and he was barely with the team, and some of the players actually came to the coach and said, "Hey, can we put him on the team, on the roster, so he can make the trip to see his family?" It's a tough thing. Players have to defect to get out of Cuba, and it's dangerous to defect.
Of course.
And there's other guys like Dan Lebatard. Did you hear his comments? Those were, if you get a chance, catch those on ESPN. Those were very good about that. But it's definitely a big deal.
It is.
Tech basketball came to an end last Thursday with a 71-61 loss to the Butler Bulldogs. The Red Raiders finished with a 19-13 record and reached the NCAA Tournament for the first time since 2007. Billy, what's your final thoughts on the Tech basketball season?
Well, if I just wanted to say it in one word, I mean, we overachieved.
Oh, yeah.
And so if anybody wants to look down on this season and think that we had not a good season or anything, I mean, that's baloney. No. That's malarkey. We had a great season for what was expected of us. We were predicted to finish last in the Big 12. We ended up finishing 7th out of the strongest conference in the nation at 19-12. I mean, obviously, could we have done better? Do we want more? Yeah, we want more. But I like what we got looking into this future. I mean, we had this year 4 players averaging in double digits in scoring, and 2 of them are coming back next year. So, I'm excited to see what that has what it has to bring.
I mean, 6 of your 8 rotational guys are all returning, plus you have Jordan Jackson and C.J. Williamson who can help develop.
I would have loved to see him more play this year, honestly.
Well, and if they can improve, I think Tech's going to have to get a little bit more scoring next year. I think Justin Gray is going to have to really step up.
I agree.
I think he's one of the best shooters. Aaron Ross, what he did in conference, if he can do that an entire season, I think he's a big deal. But, yeah, like you said, I mean, look at the wins they had. Oklahoma, Iowa State, at Baylor by like 19 points.
Best one of the year.
Even their non-conference, Hawaii, Arkansas, Little Rock, South Dakota State, all tournament teams. 2 of them got wins, and then, of course, the win over Texas. So that was big. I think it's a good year for Tech. I think big things are in store next year.
I do, too.
I think they could finish top half of the Big 12.
I'd like to see that.
Well, that's our show for this week's edition of MCTV Sports 101. Join us next week for all the latest big-name stories in sports. I'm Kyle Stafford.
And I'm Billy Ingle. Until next time.